Welcome to Live.Laugh.Launch, the go-to-market podcast for everyone who brings products to life. I'm Katie Moss, and whether you're leading strategy, building campaigns, designing experiences, or figuring out how all the pieces fit together, this show is for you. We explore every angle of go-to-market success, from the big picture thinking to the nitty-gritty execution. Each episode dives into what really works, what doesn't, and how cross-functional teams collaborate to turn ideas into market wins. If you're in marketing, building a startup, or just fascinated by how great products find their audience, you're in the right place. Let's launch into it. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Live.Laugh.Launch. Today I have with me a very special guest, Clint Oram. He is a podcaster, blogger, and a fractional CMO who helps mission-driven organizations grow through strategic clarity and authentic storytelling. As a co-host of the Prompt This podcast and co-founder of Sugar CRM, Clint brings decades of experience in marketing, technology, and leadership to guide companies towards sustainable impact. His work blends deep business insight with a commitment to the benefit of all beings, inspiring leaders to align purpose with performance. So welcome to the podcast, Clint. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks, Katie. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me join you.
Perfect. So we used to work together at a previous organization, and we got to do a lot of go-to-market work together.
Yes, we did, didn't we?
So I'm sure we will hit on some of that.
I was the talking head. Insert here and have him say this stuff, right?
About all that, I think you had some brains behind the operations as well. But
I've been known to have a couple opinions, so maybe I did share a few opinions along the way. But yeah, I was always very impressed with the launch planning you did, and I'm thrilled with the podcast you're doing now. I think it's spot on. It's right in your wheelhouse.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about all the things that you've done over time. There's a lot to dig into, and then some of your more recent projects as well. So over time, you started with Sugar CRM, the open source world, moved over to SaaS. You've worked on GTM the entire time. How has this new era of AI influenced everything, and what's fundamentally new about this wave of technology?
Oh boy, that's a big question. It's big. It's absolutely big. I mean, I look at what's happening right now in the technology space, and this feels as big easily as 1994 in the internet. And I was recently talking to a guy about this, and he was comparing it back to as big of an impact as electricity in 1882. Pause and think about that. Is AI as big as the internet in 94? Or is it as big as electricity in 1882? And I agree with him. The answer is definitely somewhere in the middle there. It's big. It's changing the way we work with technology. It's changing the way we interact with each other. Regardless of whether you consider AI as big of a change as the internet or as big of a change as electricity, it's definitely changing the way that we're interacting with applications right now, interacting with tech as a whole. And it's also changing the way that we build and take these products to market. So the whole conversational UI, the change from a web-based application and building a really sticky, highly engaging web-based application with colors and fonts and spacing to a conversational UI, where it's more about injecting the right insights, the right guidance at the right point in time over SMS or over phone calls or over just conversations with an avatar. That's really changing the way that we interact with technology, and it's changing the way we build it, and it's changing the way we launch it, right? So it's pretty cool. It's fun. I like change.
Yeah, I would love to dig into some of those real world applications, how people are actually using AI to solve those issues. So you mentioned chat and a few other things. What have you learned in the last few months about AI through your podcast and actually looking at those specific prompts and use cases?
Yeah, it was fun to launch this podcast with a college friend of mine, roommate from college 35 years ago. We both have been wanting to do a podcast for a while. We both were looking at all the changes that were coming about us with AI, and we just flat out said, we both need to get smart on this, right? There's a lot going on. And so we We started a podcast to basically chronicle our journey of learning about AI. We've gone out and interviewed everybody that we can find. We've just launched the first 6 or so episodes. We got several more in the can ready to go. And we've got people lined up who want to talk more about this. So it's been a real fun journey to learn about what's happening with AI. If I were to summarize it, there's so many different angles. So the user experience is changing, and there's this mad scramble going on for companies to reinvent themselves under the banner of AI. There's just, all these different aspects going on. But if I were to kind of take a step back from the chaos of change, the turmoil of change, and think about it just purely of what are the broad strokes trends, the one that really kind of stands out for me is how company after company are building these 3 assistants. They're building their product assistant, they're building their customer assistant, and they're building their employee assistant. And what they're doing with this is they're empowering their own employees with access to knowledge and guidance and insights and step-by-step action plans to work with customers, and whether or not something is allowed or not from the employee manual, or how exactly do you configure their product. They're getting these answers at their fingertips in a way that's just kind of changing the way people are working. And that's really cool. Like here's a very practical, hands-on, small example, but one that I think really illustrates the point. You and I have been in the tech industry for a while. How many times have you and I been involved in responding to an RFP? Plenty.
A few.
Right? Yeah. And it often takes days to pull together all the answers for an RFP. And I know that many companies choose to actually be very sparing in how they respond to an RFP from a potential client. In fact, many companies have just taken the policy of saying we don't respond to RFPs, because by the time we pull together a response, the whole process, the evaluation process, is going to have slipped right past us. Now with AI-based product assistance, you can pass an RFP right into that product assistant, and it'll come back with all the answers, probably about 95 to 99% correct in a matter of seconds. Yeah. And now you can be in the RFP game. You can be responding at a level that you weren't able to do before. And that is just one little micro change in how sellers are engaging with prospects out there. But I think it tells a much larger story, right? It tells that story of how speed and efficiency and effectiveness can all be achieved so much more quickly. And it's changing the way that companies are interacting with prospects and interacting with their customers. And you just kind of take those examples and you work your way across, what's going on with all of my customers right now. Pass through all of your customer meeting transcripts from Zoom or Teams or whatever it is that you're using. Pass those through an LLM and find out what is the sentiment across your customers. What are the trends that are happening with your customers? What product feedback that may never have made it past the sales team or the customer support team back to the product team? How do you synthesize that product feedback and feed it back to the product team? And it's just really accelerating a lot of things. That is both exciting and a little bit scary.
I think the RFP one is a great example, though, because that's so easy to tie back to ROI into, massive potential revenue that you could accrue that you wouldn't have otherwise, right? Just by using some of these tools.
Well, what's the saying? You're going to miss 100% of the shots you never take, right? So
yes,
be in the game, be more competitive, have your name out there at the very least, be known to be responsive. And it just all these, whether you win the deal or not, if you're in the game, you're shaping perceptions. And if you're in 50 RFPs that you weren't in before and you close 2, 3, 4 of them, well, the ROI is right there.
Yeah. So you mentioned you recently launched your podcast. You have several episodes going. What have you learned about go-to-market from launching the podcast and using AI?
Boy, that's been a fun one. I can tell you that applying my go-to-market brain to the launching of media was different for me, right? Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, I had done a podcast before at Sugar CRM. So this is my second podcast. And if there's one thing I've learned is to appreciate the marketing team that was supporting me when I did my
that.
first podcast, Fuel Growth. Fuel Growth was, for me, it was just, it was fun to record the sessions with my co-host Lizzie. Then I'd hand it over to marketing, and then they take care of everything. And all of these announcements would appear on LinkedIn and X, and I didn't have to do any of the work, and I just sat there and enjoyed the benefits from it. Now I had to do it myself, and that was a challenge. So I think that the first thing that Greg and I did is we found a marketing person to help us out. Right, that was
Smart.
really the most important first step, because everything from branding to coherency of the messages that we took to the market, it really took somebody with a detailed marketing brain to organize all that, and an eye for quality and all that. We were lucky. Greg's wife had done a long career in marketing and was looking to help us out a bit to get things started. So we got to tap into Barbara very quickly, and it's been a great partnership. The 2-person team very quickly turned into a 3-person team. So I'll pause there and really reflect on the fact that you can't ever underestimate the value of a talented marketing individual to help you do a launch, organize a launch. In fact, Greg, my co-host, who's done his whole career in selling, as he's been participating in the launch activities and he's been participating in driving certain components of the marketing plan, he's come back and said, I've never realized how hard marketing is. I've got a whole new appreciation for marketers. So that's been one piece that we've learned. Let's see. Another piece that we've learned is, for us right now, we're kind of doing founder-led go-to-market strategy, right? If you tightly coupled with a content-led go-to-market strategy. So we're building content, we're pushing content out, we're building an audience, we're leveraging our own networks. Greg and I both are. So Greg and I both have pretty decent sized networks inside of LinkedIn and X, and we're leaning heavily on those networks and we're promoting to those networks. We ended up finding that we needed some automation to help us just keep the drumbeat going. So we turned to a tool called Ziply. I think you've had co-founder of Ziply on your podcast before, Deepak,
Yes.
right? We were very closely with Deepak. We think he's got just a fantastic solution for building brand awareness and making yourself very visible, to the point where I'm actually now an advisor for his company. I think it's just a top-notch solution. So yeah, that's kind of what we learned, if in a nutshell, is the value of marketing, the strategy of founder-led and content-led go-to-market, and in there leveraging technology to really accelerate the brand awareness. And it's worked out well for us. We've got a great first 6 weeks response, and our audience is growing, and we're at the point where we're clocking in 100 new viewers a week, which is just kind of amazing.
Great.
For what we're able to accomplish in those first 6 weeks. And yeah, that's there you go. There's my summary.
No, I love it. You guys are doing great so far. I'd like to dig in a little bit more to this founder-led strategy. Obviously, it's not just for podcasting and personal branding. It's really an imperative in the SaaS world today, the B2B, even the B2C world today. Why do you think that kind of founder-led content strategy is so essential?
I think people, in the end, people are interested in people, right? Business is about people working with people. That's always been my opinion. Now, okay, in there, I've specialized my career in B2B, where that's abundantly the case. B2C, you can cast all these comments about e-commerce and the value of one-to-many in there, but I still think people are attached to stories. Even if you kind of a hands-off experience with a brand through an e-commerce site, you're still interested in the stories around why this company started, what they were seeking to achieve, what was the trigger point that inspired a founder to actually go do something new. Yeah, people stories. And people are attracted to people, and people want to hear about people. And so the founder story at its core is, I saw a problem. The world is changing. Old technology was bad. I saw a way of doing something new, and I'm going to go make it happen. And people want to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. But with that, of course, there's, again, back to the explosion of AI. And people, I think for the most part, can now tell when things are written by AI. So how do you combine the two in a way that you can automate your content, but it still feels authentic?
I'm not going to agree that people can always tell when it's AI generated.
Okay, maybe I could tell because I do a lot of content.
I work with AI. I co-create a lot of content with AI. And I put a lot of effort into making sure that it's in my voice. What are those standard tell signs, right? If it starts off with an analogy or a simile, it has 3 points, and there's an M dash in there. You're like, yeah, that's AI, right?
Yeah.
So one, I make sure that I don't always start everything with an analogy or simile. I don't have 3 points in everything, and I pull out those M dashes and the emojis pretty quickly. So there's some simple things to do to just kind of separate yourself from the pack. But I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, is separating yourself from the pack, right? I've had some people complain to me that LinkedIn has just become this sea of AI-generated drivel that is impossible to sift through. Yeah, to a certain degree, I can see that point, right? But I also think that the high quality stuff really stands out quickly, and just by putting some effort and some of your personality into what you're writing, you can do that. Now, I think everything that you post should be something that's co-created as opposed to just auto-generated. I think if you're just relying on auto-generation, you're going to look like AI drivel, and you're going to what's it called? AI slop. That's the new term, right?
Yes.
AI, it's going to just look like AI slop. But if you put some of your own personal stories in there, and you focus on telling something that's valuable, that captures your attention, I think you start separating very quickly from the pack. And you have to do that. This is the point that I ultimately come back to, is anytime you're doing what you should always be doing, brand development, and in any endeavor that you're working on, your own personal career, volunteer organization, your work, you're part of building the brand of your company, of your organization. And anytime you're consciously building brand, frequency is the most important part. You just need to be seen. You need to be out there. Your name needs to be out there. Then comes the judgment. Is this good quality stuff that I'm going to pay attention to, right? And so I'm going to come back and say that you have to work hard to get your name out there. If your job is to go build brand for your company, you should be leveraging technology to get you in as many different places as possible. And then it's your job to make sure that it's compelling content and high quality content, and passes that instant judgment of, blah, AI slop, or, interesting, I'll click on more. Why not? I'll give them an active engagement, right? I'll click on more and expand and see what's there. There you go. I think it's a co-creation exercise more than anything else, and that's what leads to value. And you have to be out there, and you have to be present.
Yeah, definitely agree. And first, I was really worried for other content marketing folks out there when AI really started taking off with ChatGPT, but I think at least some folks are starting to realize how important it is to have, that co-created, really engaging content. Authentic. More than ever, right?
Needs to be authentic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I recently interviewed a sales leader, and he made the point of what he says to his employees when they express worry that AI is going to steal his job. He turns them very quickly and says, AI is not going to take your job. The sales rep who knows AI is going to take your job. And I would come back to that exact same in every facet, whether it's marketing, finance, kind of work your way through all the different roles in a company. AI is not going to take your job. It's the person that knows how to leverage AI. That person's going to take your job. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you are advising some founders, you already mentioned Deepak. How are you talking to them about adapting their go-to-market playbooks for the AI era? And what patterns are you seeing with founders and executives in that space?
I think probably this is interesting, and find it ironic, I guess we'll call it that. Probably one of the hardest things to do is to convince a founding team to go through a structured vision, mission, values exercise.
Yes, I'm aware.
It's like there's this visceral hate of it. No, that's going to suck. It's going to lead to arguments. It's going to be a pain in the butt. It's going to be just a bunch of arguing over a bunch of synonyms and stuff like that. And they end up not realizing the fact that while they may have a crystal clear vision of what they're doing in their mind, and their founder, co-founder might have a crystal clear vision, unless they're actively talking about what that vision is, that vision could start drift. And that vision drift happens faster and faster the more people you bring to a team. And if you're not consciously putting effort into aligning what that vision is, what we're doing and why we're doing it, then everybody ends up getting focused on how we're doing it. And then fractures in roadmap and disagreements happen and all that kind of stuff. Greg and I, my co-host at Prompt This, we actually went through an AI-led vision, mission, values exercise. We're going to be posting the whole exercise that we did up on our blog just to share with the community how we went about it. But it really was something as simple as asking ChatGPT, guide us through a half day vision, mission, values exercise. And it came back with a whole workshop structure for us and asking questions and guiding us through it. And we were both amazed that at the end of the 4-hour period, it was a fun exercise, right? Because it wasn't ChatGPT is this, or any AI, let's call it LLMs in general, but I'll just call it ChatGPT in this particular case. ChatGPT was this impartial observer, impartial arbitrator, impartial referee. We would kick out words and it'd come back and tell you, no, those aren't very compelling words. Okay, what would be compelling words? Here's some compelling words. Oh, you're right. Those are much better, right? And so the whole exercise just accelerated, and we were really literally done in a half day. We tried to get it done in 2 hours. It took 4 hours, but it didn't take 4 days. And at the end of it, we were looking at all the words that we had pulled together and said, yeah, this really captures us. And the act of coming up with better words and co-creating with ChatGPT, the three of us, me, Greg, and ChatGPT, we had a great collaboration exercise. And so we came out of that and then asked ChatGPT to create a branding guidelines based upon the vision, mission, values. And that's when our head of brand, Barbara, came in. She joined the team right around this time. We'd already done the exercise and we created a brand document, handed it over to her, said, yeah, that's like 95% correct. This is great. A couple tweaks that she put in there, a couple questions she put back to us, but it was done in a couple email threads more than anything else. And we had this really clear set of words and positioning and competitive positioning and everything that guided our go-to-market activities with clarity, with alacrity, with the punch that I think really helped us in a big way. We weren't shifting. Sometimes when you launch an endeavor, you're kind of doing just-in-time positioning shifting. We're like, oh no, we're now this, and oh, we're doing that, and oh, let's change this, and it can get confusing to your audience. And the more you're shifting things around your audience, you're more likely you are to lose your audience, especially in those early days when you're trying to get their attention. And we were able to come in really crisp, really clear, really consistent out of the gates, and I think it helped significantly in getting us that initial attention. We put the numbers through ChatGPT and we asked, okay, here we are in terms of downloads and impressions and everything else in the first 15 days, the first 30 days, the first 45 days, and it kept coming back saying, "Oh, you're in the top 15% of business podcast launches." Oh, that's exciting. And then of course we asked the question, could you cite your resources on where that came from? And it said, okay, we got these metrics from these sites. This is why you can trust the numbers. And it gave us a lot of conviction to continue to lean in hard on what we were doing. And we just continued to pick up momentum. And I think that virtuous cycle of a clean launch based upon crisp and clear brand guidelines mapped back to engaging and compelling and authentic vision, mission, values. I look at that exercise and I think to myself, how come other founders aren't all doing that? And I've run into the case, back to your original question, there just seems to be this kind of visceral negative reaction to putting in that energy. And I think it's something everybody should be doing.
Yeah, I agree. Mostly because I help companies with that.
Yep.
But I will say, to your point, I have also in a similar way scaled that. So I was about a month ago on site with an ed tech client and sitting in the room with executives, more than just two people, but We went through mission, vision, values. We also went through like their larger messaging position.
Did you use ChatGPT to guide you through it?
I was about to say yes and no. I have a framework. However, on using particular words and things like that, we absolutely did. And that saved so much time.
Yeah, you got through it quickly, didn't you?
And
it took away a lot of that pain of arguing like, oh, my thesaurus is better than your thesaurus.
Yeah. Right? Instead of going back and forth as well, we did it in a day as well, which is great. But just having that on hand to kind of quickly bounce ideas back and then get executive sign off immediately was super helpful.
Yeah, especially when the LLM comes back with evidence as to why some particular positioning or messaging is compelling or not compelling, right? It's not just good, bad because my thesaurus is better than your thesaurus, but it actually tells you some good reasons why and how it can map back to your core values and things like that, and why is it authentic and why is it not authentic, and everybody says, yeah, that's right. Let's move forward.
For me, it was also helpful because I haven't worked in ed tech as much. So I was able to ask, like, does this have any connotations, implications for this particular industry or any competitors using similar language? I want to make sure we're not doing that. So using it for research as well was helpful.
So let me pause in there on what you just described. And I'll ask a very provocative question. Do you think you guys came up with AI slop, even though you used AI to help in the creation process?
I don't, because we also had my framework and my expertise, and we used it as a co-creator and supplemental in that way.
Yeah, I think that's the magic sauce right there that you just described is applying human judgment with the machine-powered creation speed. I don't know, those aren't the right words, but you get what I'm saying. And marrying them together, that's when you get something that's really powerful and compelling, and you can get it out to market quickly. And if there's anything I think we're learning right now in this new world of AI is time to market is king, right? If you spend 6 months back in your cave chewing on ideas, there's like 3 other people that have already launched a product in the same time, building audience and getting real-time feedback and tuning in their product market fit.
Yeah, we actually put in first a trademark on a term that day.
Perfect.
Definitely excellent. Moving quickly. Awesome. So I want to, just click in a little bit more on AI and the human component as well. As we start to use AI for more of the doing, what skills or instincts become more valuable for marketers, sellers, leaders?
All right. So first generation, second generation AI. Let's just kind of hit that one real quick. First generation AI was all about using predictive analytics and models to chunk through data more quickly, and you could apply things to next best action or most valuable customer or all the things along those lines that are really kind of numbers driven. And then second generation AI is when we turn language into numbers, right? That was that kind of the big aha moment was we could turn language very reliably into vectors that we could put into databases that we could then apply math to. And then, of course, we came up with the folks at Google came up with the whole transformer methodology of how to improve those algorithms very rapidly. And we end up in this world where we have this language-based AI that's changing everything, right? And in there, as you work your way through all those ideas, you get to a world where language-based AI is changing the way that we're thinking about everything, right? But in the end, it's really, even though you got this kind of pattern recognition at planetary scale, these LLMs are really only good at guessing what the next set of words are that come together. It's like, kind of grammar check on steroids, right? And a lot of people read too much into that. There's not a lot, the reasoning models around this language-based AI are really still kind of immature. And so you could ask AI to come back with 4 different, describe a scenario, come back with 4 different strategies of how I could solve a particular problem. And it'll give you 4 different strategies. And if you ask it which one's the best one, it will tell you what the most common one is. It'll describe it as best, but what is actually happening underneath the covers is that it's giving you the most common answer for the circumstances involved. It's not really applying good judgment, because sometimes, especially in the world of building a business, being the most common is absolutely the wrong answer.
Right.
You're not going to be differentiated. So you have to apply judgment. So that's how I like to use AI is, let me describe a situation, a scenario, circumstance that give me the strategy, help me clarify what I just described, give me the different ways of approaching to solve it, and then I'll apply my judgment. And so I think that's the most important skill coming ahead of us is the ability to manage AI, right? Mm-hmm. Some management skills become very important. The ability to kind of pull out the best of an LLM is very comparable to pulling out the best of your employees in terms of asking the right questions and kind of honing in on the right answer, honing in on the right framework so that you can get to the right answer. And then the second most important thing I think comes in there is judgment, right? And I think that's how you work best with AI is to approach it the way I just described.
Totally agree. No notes. Let's talk a little bit about the past and the future for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we mentioned you were, one of the co-founders of Sugar CRM.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, the world looked a little different pre AI explosion. If you were starting a new company today, specifically software company, I don't discount your podcast. You're starting a new software company today.
Yeah.
What would your first 3 go-to-market steps be, and how would they look different from before?
First 3 go-to-market steps, and how would they be different from before? I think the first one is that vision, mission, values, brand exercise we just talked about. Stop avoiding it. Stop coming up with excuses. Eat your vegetables, I guess is the way to say it. But it doesn't have to be an eat your vegetables exercise. It could feel like you're eating, I don't know, I'll go further with my analogy. You're eating a filet mignon, right? You can have this really engaging, powerful, valuable exercise that sets the stage for everything. And it can be done quickly, and it can be done relatively painlessly. There should be friction, there should be tension in that exercise, because that's how the best work comes out. So I won't try and say it'll be pain-free, because then it wouldn't be valuable, in my opinion. So first exercise, do what I just said there. Second one, competitive research is freaking fun now. It is fun. The data's at your fingertips, right? The amount of information that your competitors, just figuring out who your competitors are as an early stage company is hard, especially when you're going into, if you're trying to rethink an existing space. So just figuring out your competitors, going out and systematically analyzing what they're saying on their websites, what other companies are saying about them, putting it into a structured format that everybody can digest. That kind of competitive analysis, brand analysis, so darn easy now. So darn easy. And it's really, to me, it's just fun. Right. Yeah. And then I think the last part, certainly compared to when I started Sugar CRM back in 2004, coming up with your go-to-market strategies is very different now than it was back then. We didn't know what we were doing. We just built product. We threw it out there. We had a gut instinct that it was the right thing. We got this instant audience around us. We hit the right product, right time, right market conditions, right audience, all those things. And we thought we were the smartest kids on the block, right? And I would look back and I go, you were the luckiest kids on the block. Yeah. Nothing more than that. And I look at now, you can be very strategic, systematic, thoughtful, structured. Mere mortals can go through a go-to-market planning exercise and come up with something that is probably pretty good. But the challenge is, again, applying that judgment. Is it the right thing, right? That's where we need Katie coming in and helping us sift through all that information and pull it together and start talking about, well, what about if your competitor goes down this path? How do you build real stickiness with your target audience? And this idea that came out from chat, I just went through this exercise this morning. Just before we started this call here, I was working on some strategy work for an organization that I'm involved with. And I passed all this great stuff through ChatGPT. And I said, no, come back with a set of strategies. And they're kind of wrong. They're a little flat in a couple places. And it hadn't quite interpreted what I had put in the right way. Was that my fault? Was that ChatGPT's fault? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I had to tweak it and work with it to make it be really spot on. But that exercise took me half an hour, not 3 days, to build the whole thing and then start honing it in. So that's, those are the things I'm thinking about right out of the gates is, let's see, what did I say again? The first one was vision, mission, values, brand exercise. You can do that so quickly. Second one I said was competitive research. There you go. Competitive
I was
research.
listening.
Well, that's good because this is, I am very ADHD and things go in and out of my head very quickly at times. I've never had a problem with ideas. It's keeping a hold of those ideas that actually is my challenge.
Yes.
So competitive research is, you can just get really smart on the landscape really quick. And then lastly, kind of taking all the different go-to-market models that are possible and honing it in for the right answer for what you're doing right now. You can make a lot of progress with ChatGPT, but in the end, you really do need the judgment of some seasoned marketers around you to help you make the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the execution piece, right?
Oh yeah, I haven't even got to the execution piece. But... Yeah, exactly. I'm at the front end ideation mode. Yeah. You work your way through all of it, and a lot of fun stuff. There's some new tools out there. I bring it up and I blank immediately on the name. There's a new go-to-market planning tool that's all AI based. I think I forget the name of it, but everything I just described, they've packaged into a solution. And I think for a lot of companies that's probably very helpful. That's the other thing I think I'm seeing in there is you can make a lot of progress with ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude. But in the end, software solutions that are tailored to solving a particular problem will save you so much time on that iteration cycle as you try and hone in on the right things. And I'm a big fan of expert-built systems, purpose-built systems on top of AI. I think the general case LLMs can get you started quite nicely, but you end up outgrowing them inside of 3 or 4 months, and you need some tools that are purpose-built for the problems you're trying to solve.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's more of them every day, right?
Yes, there are. Yes, there are.
All right. So just as a quick wrap up here, after, so much time helping companies grow, working on your podcast, what still surprises you or excites you most about where go-to-market is headed today?
I think the part that really excites me the most is it's turning it more into a science and less of an art. In my career of go-to-market planning, there's just a lot of throwing darts at dartboards and saying, let's go do this next, and let's go do that next, and let's try this, and let's try that. And then a lot of the butting heads with peers, is that the right place to go? Is that the right thing to do? And just a lot of, I don't know, there's a quote that I came across a while back was, if all we're going to do is debate opinions, let's just go with mine.
Yeah.
Right?
I've heard that also.
And that one really strikes true on a lot of go-to-market planning yesterday. But today, people have got these tools at their fingertips, just, starting off with something as simple as Gemini or ChatGPT, and then going into purpose-built tools where you can come up with really thoughtful, evidence-based strategies that tie directly to your brand and your go-to-market objectives. And mere mortals can do that, right? And I think that's the part I enjoy the most. It's moving from art to science.
Yeah, although I will make an argument for the artists, especially for creative advertising, because LLMs can leave you in a world of sameness, as you kind of alluded to earlier. I think there's definitely, and this may change in 5 years, but I think there's definitely
I don't think it will.
Still space.
I think the space for that expert who brings the art of the artistic finesse to the answer, that's where that'll be the difference between winners and losers. Absolutely. Yeah. If there's one thing I've learned in the last 90 days of getting smarter on AI, is AI does not replace an expert in any discipline at all. Boy, just try and create some images with AI, and then you say, create an image that looks like this. Create a hero graphic that looks like this. And then you say something like, can you just move the text 10 pixels to the right? Again, I said 10 pixels to the right. No. Again, no, I said, okay, let me see, how do I say this differently? So there's a quote from somebody I interviewed, Charles Hicks. He said it so masterfully. It was, AI will simplify the complicated and it will complicate the simple.
I love that.
Yeah. It will absolutely simplify the complicated.
I keep thinking it's going to help me with my images, and then it never does, Clint.
It never does.
It doesn't matter what you put in there; it's not going to work. So.
And you drop down to your favorite tool, Canva, or
Yeah.
I drop down to PowerPoint sometimes because I'm just very effective with PowerPoint. That's my background when it comes to working with images. You just drop it in there, do some quick changes. Okay, I got it to where I want. Now moving on. Just stay away from gradients. If there's one thing I've learned, if you have to do some hacking, cutting and pasting. But that's just an example of you can't replace expertise with AI at this stage. And I don't know that you ever will, because you'll start losing that authentic artistry that I think you were pointing back to a minute ago. And people are going to ignore AI slop more and more.
All right, Clint. So thank you so much for joining today. It's been great having you here. Where can folks find you and your new podcasts?
Well, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn, Clint Oram, and from there you'll get directed to www.promptthis.ai. That's the website for the podcast with blog articles as well as all of our podcast episodes. But you can always find the podcast on your favorite podcast distribution platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you everyone for joining.
My pleasure.